ChatGPT. Why Bukayo Saka's abuse is unjustified, as the Arsenal star shows class amid negative comments. Once again, Bukayo Saka has faced heightened scrutiny and abuse following his collision with Manuel Neuer during Arsenal's Champions League clash with Bayern Munich. This raises the question of why the winger is perceived to receive more negative comments than others, on average. Bukayo Saka became the center of attention after Arsenal's 2-2 draw with Bayern Munich. The English international went down following a collision with Manuel Neuer in the dying moments of the game at the Emirates Stadium, but his penalty appeals were waved away, and the final whistle blew. What followed was an explosion of debates, opinions, and divisions, but perhaps, unfortunately, what has become all too common, especially for Arsenal's right winger, was a stream of abuse and disrespectful comments online. From both Arsenal fans and rivals, social media erupted with images of Saka alongside plenty of distasteful language. This has raised some doubt about why Saka, in particular, is targeted, perhaps more so on average than other players. I want to delve into this a bit and try to understand the reasons behind it, if that's possible. The first place to start is where Saka often finds himself, especially when he steps up to take any penalty in a big game. In 2021, England reached the final of the European Championship, and it was indeed Saka who stepped up to take what turned out to be the decisive penalty kick, only to see Gianluigi Donnarumma save his attempt to hand the trophy to Italy. What followed was a flood of racist abuse in the days that followed, with Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford also targeted. It was a horrific experience for Saka, but one that saw some light as fans came together to show solidarity with the 19-year-old. Therefore, we must address the terrible reality that racism in football continues to prevail and be an issue that has persisted for far too long and, despite efforts made, continues to plague the sport. Undoubtedly, the abuse Saka still receives will, in many cases, have racial motivations, and there remains hope that those with the ability to do so can implement measures to scrutinize perpetrators more rigorously and decisively, while also providing valuable education on the subject to help prevent further incidents. Furthermore, Arsenal itself tends to be a more prominent club in the spotlight than most. A club that, to many, even beyond the subconscious biases of Gunners fans, seems to attract more negative attention than any other. Micah Richards spoke in January 2022 about the social distortion that exists regarding Arsenal concerning criticisms. Regarding the request to postpone the North London Derby due to player shortages impacted by COVID-19, I feel like when it comes to Arsenal, everyone wants to get involved for some reason. Arsenal has been in great form and by the rules, they've done nothing wrong. As the guys have said here, clarity, and they're playing with what they consider insufficient first-team players. So, I understand other people being frustrated. But in my opinion, they've done nothing wrong. And let's be honest, other clubs would do the same thing. This isn't an Arsenal thing. Therefore, it's logical that Saka, being an Arsenal player, faces the growing scrutiny that evidently surrounds the club. There's little that can be done about that, unlike the former. Arsenal is a team that, ultimately, is punching above its weight. Looking at the reality of the title race, two big names in the Premier League, Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp, whose teams have won titles and Champions Leagues, and then there's Arsenal, under the guidance of a first-time manager with a young team and currently at the top of the table and the betting favourites to knock out the mighty Bayern Munich. The narrative was all set on the night with Harry Kane's return, marking his inevitable penalty, and Arsenal was heading for another bottling episode. But Leandro Trossard had other ideas with his equaliser before the controversial penalty decision. Perhaps some felt cheated when Kane helped Bayern take the lead. The story was written for many, and they were excited about it, and when Saka almost turned the tables upside down, that sparked fury. Understandable? Yes, it's football. Is it acceptable that this incites abuse that leads to many? Absolutely not. Lastly, there's jealousy. Saka is a brilliant footballer, and rival fans would be desperate to have him at their clubs, which unfortunately leads the more insecure ones to turn that envy into abusive messages. Saka accessed Instagram after the Bayern game and wrote, "Frustrating, but all to play for in the second leg." The thousands of comments were indeed filled with abuse and comments we've alluded to, but the message itself is positive. Saka may still be a young player doing incredible things, but he's also older, more experienced, and perhaps somewhat hardened. He shouldn't have to be, of course, nor should he have to deal with the things pointed his way, but he shows a lot of courage every week he puts on his club or country's shirt. We live in hope that more can be done, especially on social media, to help curb abuse, but as the fight continues, Saka continues to fight for Arsenal. If they have hope of winning at the Allianz Arena, he'll be at the center of it all, a testament to his obvious quality. ChatGPT. Declan Rice and Kai Havertz are walking a tightrope of suspension amidst Arsenal's Champions League fear. Declan Rice and Kai Havertz may have avoided missing the second leg of the Champions League quarter-finals against Bayern Munich, but the Arsenal duo is still not out of danger. Despite all the drama between Arsenal and Bayern Munich on Tuesday night, from penalties to handball and red card decisions, the Gunners managed to avoid a concern their opponents couldn't. Alphonso Davies will miss the second leg after receiving a yellow card, meaning he's suspended. Arsenal had two players in the same scenario before the game, which raised concerns. Fortunately, neither Declan Rice nor Kai Havertz received a yellow card, meaning both players are indeed available for the clash in Munich next week. Havertz has been in the spotlight for his lack of discipline as the highest recipient of yellow cards in the Arsenal team, and if he were to be sent off against Aston Villa by receiving 2 yellow cards, that would have taken him to 10 for the season and incurred an additional 2-game suspension. Thankfully, he avoided a yellow card against Brighton, which would have added significant pressure to the weekend's clash. The danger isn't over, however. The yellow card suspension count will only be wiped after the quarterfinals are concluded, meaning both Rice and Havertz remain at risk. If either of them receives a yellow card in the game against Bayern at the Allianz Arena next week, they will be suspended for the following match. Should Arsenal progress, this will be the home game against either Real Madrid or Manchester City in the semi-finals of the competition. Losing either of the players would be a huge blow for Mikel Arteta, but certainly, Rice, in particular, would be the most concerning. The midfielder hasn't missed a single game for the club throughout the season, except for the Carabao Cup third-round victory over Brentford, where he had a rest for recovery. He has undoubtedly been the most influential player in the team throughout the campaign, and losing him in a clash against either of the mentioned teams would be dreadful. Arsenal now has Thomas Partey back in the squad and available, and he might even start alongside Rice at the Allianz next week as Arteta seeks to secure a big away win. Discipline has certainly improved significantly under Arteta. It started poorly, with red cards and other issues, but that has changed, and the club currently has the best disciplinary record in the Premier League. Hopefully, this will extend to the Champions League, and the club will go unscathed through the second leg. Otherwise, Arteta will rely on the depth of his team to help them overcome a rather tough opponent in the semi-finals.